So here's where you go in, again, to your console. If you want to turn on the segregate the incidents and service requests, if you want to keep them combined, that's perfectly up to you. If you're brand new to Remedyforce, if you're here looking at this because you're getting ready to do a trial org or something, it's not an option. By default, it will be the only option is that segregated view where they will be separated. But for those of you, and that's probably most of you on this webinar, if you're an existing user, you get the option as to whether to turn that on or turn that off. This is a very busy screen, and we're going to give you guys the whole access to this whole presentation. But basically, they're just trying to give you an idea here of, where you can get into some issues in here. So, where is it separated if you're an agent, when you're in view, when you're in the tools, when you're in there. So I'll just kind of let you guys read that. It's pretty self-explanatory when you get the presentation, but it's just basically where is it going to show up. Again, it's done through the Remedy administration. It's also done in the CMDB, so that if you're going to break service requests and incidents out in your Remedyforce console, it only makes sense that you would want to do the same thing when you're like looking at a CI record, have those out there as well. And, of course, in their quick view and our reports module, you'd want to be able to do the same thing. So here, this obviously is we're in that Remedyforce console. It used to say incidents and service requests. If I hit that checkbox over there, it will now break those out into two. So that's your console view. Here is where you've also, when you are configuring the console layout in admin, this is where, again, you would see that broken out in the console customization. Again, as I mentioned over in the CMDB, now when I go and look at a record, I will see incident and then service request on a separate line. Only makes sense. And then last but not least, this is where you do that setting if you want your quick views, if you want them separated for quick views and reports. And the prior page made note of this. You just set this to so service request equals true, meaning as an entity unto itself as you go through there. So that's your quick views. So we also have an updated service request form. So, this typically looks like a form, and now instead of just the details of the thing, now it'll actually say service request form itself. So here's what it was entitled, who did it. Here were the questions that were asked in the SRD, so I can see all of those right in the record itself. And then if you want to give them the ability to be able to edit, again, that's another thing. Now, obviously, I can't edit a service request if it's sitting there in a pending state because an approval process is kicked off. So this is just a little friendly reminder. Most people would understand that anyway, because that record is basically locked until, if an approval is in there, it's locked until such time it's either approved or rejected, and then it can free back up there. The management of service requests. This obviously looks like building out your SRD here, and now what you'll see is they've given you some buttons here where you can do multis that you've got in there. This is kind of showing you what the form would look like if you did want to come in and build the additional business service. Again, coming over to the same type of step through that you're used to having. The difference is that now, of course, I can clone some of these. I can now come in here and when I'm doing my question boxes, I can have the Multiselect, which will show on the, I believe it's the very next slide. This is where you can determine who gets to see these service requests. It's a little richer. It used to be you could do it by profile or account. Now I can configure specific permission sets even within the same roles and all as far as who I might want to be able to access particular service requests that we have out there. So a little bit more flexibility to control that as you go through here. For the staff, as I mentioned, we've always had the ability to say, is there a price in there, and then you elect it as to whether you expose that in the service request and all. But now we've added these additional things, the unit price, the quantity, the total, and staff can see that. That's not going to be submitted out there for the end user to see, but sometimes staff may need to do that. And, now we can also say that, whether we want to allow attachments within the service request itself. That's kind of new to the system. And, of course, that's where you check that box for that. Give me this extra detail here for the for the agents and the staff. This is showing you an example. I mentioned that instead of just being yes, no type of responses to the questions, I now can have a pick list of values, so I could say this is for Dallas and Chicago type of thing. So that'll add a lot of flexibility to those of us who create the SRDs in what we're able to do there, and some of the things that user could request. This will certainly make this a lot better and more suitable for the user community there. So again, just showing you the pick list values, that's where you go in to kind of do that. Now the client themselves, when they're in self-service, either through My IT or through the traditional console there, now we can determine, again, do we want to display service request definitions and incidents together, or we want to have them separate, right, again, for the end user, just like we did for the staff members that we've got out there. This is where we're also going to be able to show the task. If there are tasks associated with a service request, we really never shared that with the end user community before, and I suspect there will be some debate with some of you guys as to whether you think that's a good idea or whether you think that's exposing too much detail to the end user, but at least the option is yours now to configure it for whatever best suits your processes within your organization there. And again, that's where you set those to do, and then there's where the task would show associated with that particular service request for that end user. The other thing they're doing, as I mentioned, is if as the end user is filling it out, and we now have the ability to try to help them out. If we didn't phrase some of the questions as clear as they should be, or didn't make clear that they're mandatory fields or something, we now can just come back and give a little bit of guidance to the end user of, hey, we really need you to get this information and needs to be in this format and that type of thing. So when the staff, of course, is now looking at a service request, or it's been submitted, it's now over into the console. They've opened up one of these service requests. We kind of looked at this before, but now what you get is we know who submitted it and when, and then we start to get some of the detail in the bottom that you've got here. What was I actually asking for? What did it come in as? So that's kind of new as far as what you have there. These reports were very much needed, and most people went out and built them themselves. But I'm glad to see that out of the box, they're certainly they've gone on and configured these for you. So once you upgrade to Spring 15, these will automatically be available for you. Just like if you remember a release or two ago, I think it was last release, they came out of the box with about 10 or 12 CMDB reports that you didn't have to bother to create yourself. So now they've done the same thing for more of the IT management reports. So things you would expect: SLAs, priority, average resolutions time, incidents by number. You can kind of read those, but most of those are pretty nice. I've looked at them. We've done some things on Ptaho as well to include bringing in the manager. As we often know, somebody comes in through their service request definition, they're requesting something that requires a manager approval. Now we can make sure that that's an easy way to import that manager right from AD to make it available in Remedyforce so that we can know where to send that particular one to. We also can bring in additional information, again, if you have this in AD, of other things about that particular client, the phone numbers, mobile numbers, fax numbers, those types of things. And we have a new Ptaho package if you want to import some business services and all that you may have in some of the one. They basically just created the scheme for you there. So some other things, as most of you know, I think it was 2 releases ago, maybe 3, they added to the console the ability to do a multiple update. At the beginning of this presentation, I talked to you can now do a multi-update in the CMDB. Well, a couple of releases ago, we had that, like you could click on several different incidents, for example, and have all of them changed to close with one update click. That's still there, but now they're going to give you the ability to either enable that or not enable it, because believe it or not, some folks didn't want that ability to be out there, so now it's configurable. I think most of you already know how that works. And your quick views, when I'm configuring those, you now can actually have a null value. So where show me all the records where priority hasn't been set, or where the queue is empty or something of this nature. So it just gives you another value to test on there, because null is not zero. Record locking. This has been an area of a lot of discussions here as to what should you do when you're looking at this. So basically the default is, if I've got a record open, the record locks are going to be off, so we're not going to do it. Or you can set it to automatic, meaning that if I open a record, an incident, a change, whatever it may be, within Remedyforce, that particular record is going to be locked as far as anybody else being able to do anything to it. The trouble with that setting, of course, is if I get pulled into a meeting and forget I left that ticket open on my system, that kind of nobody else can do anything with it. They can see it, but they can't do anything with it. So again, we're going to give the admin of the system the ability to set a timeout as to when to go on and unlock that record and close it out. Or, the other one is manual, which staff decides, do I want to lock this record or not? And the time that it would stay locked, of course, is again an admin setting. So a lot of people had a lot of questions and issues around this. So it kind of looks to me like they said, okay, we're going to push this to you the end user, meaning the customer, not your end users, and we're going to let you decide what best fits within your process flows, and you guys can configure that yourself. Again, just an example screenshot of where you say you wanted, which type, automatic, manual, staff, and then set your particular timeouts there. And this is our message that you would get if you tried to work on a record that had been locked by somebody else. It clearly identifies to you that it can't be edited at this point in time because it's locked by, and of course it gives you the staff member who has that record locked, so at least you could shoot them a chatter message or maybe and say, hey, I need to do something here. How about releasing this record back to the system there? This is another one that's kind of people have been asking for also. I mean, a lot of us out there certainly continue to do incidents via email, and we now have the ability to support basically rich text formatting in the email, and that'll be nice. We normally take the subject, becomes the title of the incident, whatever we type in the body becomes the description of the incident. So this is just another way of being able to do that if you have selected that option. Of course, that's showing you where it is now, a rich text box. So screenshots, or just, I want to put it all in bold and red, so we now give you that option if you've done it in the email itself there. This is just some additional queue availability. You can inactivate a queue for a certain period of time if you want to, or make it unavailable. So they've now got the active queues and the inactive or temporarily suspended queues in there. We've also expanded the on behalf of. Most of you know that in self-service you have typically been able to do requests on the behalf of somebody else. Well, they now have kind of done that to where they're going to use the role and the hierarchy. Again, you select which method of that you want it, but basically what it's going to do is if you belong to an account, you're going to be able to submit a request on behalf of anybody that belongs to that account. But you would still only be able to view your particular records in self-service there. So again, as you can see, this takes us to the end of this. Not a lot of new capabilities as far as new feature functionality in this release, but a tremendous number of improvements in the configurability and in the usability, both on behalf of the agents as well as on behalf of the clients that are out there.